Everybody, welcome back to the next part in my firmware 3.15 dialing in series. We've just recently received this amazing update from the fine folks over at Line 6, and one of my new favorite additions is the Dynamic Room Reverb. I've really come to enjoy this whole new dynamic series of reverbs we've been given, and I thought let's take a look at this, make sure everybody understands what all the parameters are doing so that you can just dial it in a more efficient and successful manner. So without further ado, let's head over to HX Edit and take a look and see what this new addition can do. So here we are in the Dynamic Room Reverb. I have a little preset set up based around the template I always use. If I turn the reverb off, it sounds like this. It's based around the Matchstick Channel 1. All right, turn this reverb on, and we have this at these kind of, I don't know if these are the default settings, might just be what popped up when I pulled it up. All right, so a room reverb is one of my favorite things to have. So let's go through the parameters and see what everything does here so that we understand that, and then we'll play around with them a bit to see what some of the extreme settings do. So decay, pretty self-explanatory. That's going to be how long it takes for the reverb to fade away or to decay, right? We have settings in the extremes from 0.1 seconds to 3 seconds. The pre-delay, as I've talked about in many other videos, is just how long it's going to take before the reverb actually engulfs our note or is heard, right? So if I have this set down at 0, the reverb is going to come in right away. I have this set up here at 100 milliseconds. There's going to be 100 milliseconds from the time I hit to when that reverb comes in and kind of engulfs the sound. The damping is going to determine the frequency above which the reverb will be absorbed, right? So if we come up way up high here to 20 kilohertz, you'll hear all of that high end is kind of out of control. If we bring this way down, you'll notice that everything above 500 hertz, it's very dampened and doesn't decay in the same way. If we set that somewhere in the middle, so it gives us a nice way to be able to control the sound of our reverb. The diffusion is going to basically set the amount of kind of smearing between the discrete echoes. This can kind of give us a softer sound to our reverbs if we're up high, and almost like a more chattery sound on percussive notes if we're down lower. If you notice that, but at the higher setting, it's just a little bit smoother. So that can be a very useful control as well. The motion rate is where this dynamic room really comes to life for me. And the motion rate is how quickly the room's shape may be changing due to people moving or doors opening or closing. That's how it's described in the release notes. We'll take a deeper look at that in a second. The mix control is going to be very simple. It's going to be the balance between the dry signal and the wet signal. Low frequency is an interesting setting. It's going to work in conjunction with the low gain control, and it's just going to set the frequency at which the low gain control is going to work. The low gain sets the reverb time below the frequencies that's set in the low frequency control. So it's going to basically, by bringing this to negative values, the bass frequencies below this point are going to decay faster, and if we put it above, they're going to decay longer. They're going to last longer in comparison to the treble frequencies. So very interesting stuff, and a control we'll look at in a minute that can be very useful. And then, as with most reverbs, we have low cut and high cut filters, which are just going to remove all of the affected signal below a certain frequency or above a certain frequency. And the early reflections are just going to be that, and it just sets the amount of this early reflective room sound. So setting this up at 3 seconds. Let's bring this back down to 0.1 seconds. Even set at that low amount gives us a nice effect, right? And then we can work our way all the way up to 3 seconds. Very nice. As I mentioned before, the pre-delay, if we have this at 0, it's just going to sort of engulf our note right away. Up to 100 milliseconds. Kind of notice that my note attack comes out a little bit more before it's engulfed in the reverb. The damping, like I showed you already, very useful to kind of control the absorption of frequencies above a certain point. The diffusion, this is really going to be maybe a little bit more of a subtle control and up to us where we want to set it. We could always start off with that somewhere in the middle. Now, the motion rate is going to be interesting. Let's take a listen to this with motion rate on 0. Do you hear the motion and the movement that is introduced into the reverb tails? With the motion rate at 0, it's very static sounding, and it kind of comes to life as we add some of this motion rate in. Again, you'll probably have to be listening on a good set of headphones or a good set of stereo speakers in stereo to kind of really hear this effect. Our low frequency, so if I bring this up, let's say to 250, and you'll hear if I roll the low gain down, the decay on the high frequencies keeps going. The decay on the low frequencies kind of cuts out earlier. And vice versa if we go above it. Do you hear the decay on the low frequencies carries on longer? So this can be a really useful control to really fine-tune our reverb in a situation where we want a specific sound. Low and high cuts, obviously, if I take the high cut all the way off, we get a lot of more high-end information in our sound. If I brought that all the way down, it's going to dull the sound a lot. And same thing with the low cut for frequencies below wherever that setting is. Let's just set that at 100 hertz and 10 kilohertz. And our earlier reflections, I kept the motion rate fairly high. You can really hear it. Let's bring that back a bit. You can really hear a lot of early reflections in there. And I mean, this is going to be a lot of personal preference here as to how we like to dial our reverbs in. So again, I can't really offer any particular settings that are going to be the, quote unquote right settings. This is going to really be a lot of personal preference and really situational based as well, depending on what you're trying to achieve in a particular song or, composition or what have you, right? So, but some basic settings you could start with, I could have, 50 milliseconds on the pre-delay, maybe 1.5 seconds on the decay. I'd probably leave damping there. Leave the diffusion in and around there. Maybe come in with a bit of the motion, maybe somewhere around 37% of the mix. I would probably just leave the low frequency and low gain alone for most situations. And a low cut at 100 hertz and a high cut at 10 kilohertz. Early reflections at 1 give us something like this. So really nice stuff. Some people might find that a little long. They can even bring that way down. They don't want it so wet sounding. So these are really great new additions, and I think you can see understanding these controls is very important to getting the effect we want out of it, but they are extremely flexible. So what do you guys think? Another great addition to our Line 6 Helix HX Stomp and the whole lineup. I think this is going to be an extremely useful effect. I'm going to start utilizing it in some of my presets. I never thought the reverbs in the Helix were ever bad, but I do appreciate sort of maybe the more control we're being given over more parameters now, and these motion controls to kind of give them a little bit more movement and less of a static sound is a very cool addition to this whole lineup of reverbs. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please share this with anybody who you think would get some use out of it. Please like the video and also subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back soon with some more. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and sharing your time with me. Ciao for now.